Hi everyone, it's the end of the week here, and I've had a bit of a tough week. I've had a cold all week, and so I haven't been able to do much reading. And tonight I was supposed to go to a concert in Hyde Park and see the legends Bob Dylan and Neil Young perform together, and I had a ticket to this, but I gave it up because I knew I was still recovering a bit, and I knew that standing for several hours in a tightly packed crowd, all like watching this thing, I would just be coughing and spluttering and not having a good time, and nobody wanted that, so I thought I would just stay home. But today I saw a tag video. Matthew Sciarappa did the tag video, the mid-year check-in tag, and I haven't done a tag video in a long time, and I just thought that looks fun. And I had that booktuber thing where I'm like, oh, I feel so guilty, I haven't done a tag video in so long, and people have tagged me in things, and I've really been meaning to get around to them, and I've wanted to do it, but I just keep getting distracted and not doing them. And but I saw this and I thought it looked good, and especially because another tag that everyone's been doing is the mid-year freakout tag, and I'm a very calm, chill person. I just like quietness and calmness, and so mid-year check-in tag, that sounded better. And yeah, and it just sounded fun, and I like the way Matthew did it. So I'll put a link down to his video below, and all the questions if you want to do this tag as well, or if you want to answer the questions yourself in the comments, that would be fun. But I'll go through all these questions. But also I thought I would, because I like to keep busy even if I'm staying home ill. I'm gonna make this recipe for roasted sweet potatoes and homemade labneh, and so I'm gonna demonstrate this recipe as well at the end of this video, if you want to stay on and watch that. I know Matthew likes doing my at-home baking with Eric videos, so I'm gonna tag that on to the end as well, just for fun. But I'll go through all the book questions first. So the first question is, how many books have you read so far this year? And I already talked about in my top books of the year video how I didn't want to count up all the books that I've read so far this year, because I didn't want to make this pressure of like, have I read enough books or not. But yeah, why not? I went through and counted up all the books I've read so far this year, and it is 53. I've read 53 books so far this year, which I sort of thought was around what I would have read, and yeah, I don't know, that's fine. That's about average for me, I guess. So the next question is, what is your favorite book so far this year? And I made a top 10 books video, and I don't like to rank them and say like, oh, is this book number 5 or 6 on my list, and so I'm not going to pick a like top favorite of all time, but I will talk about the one I read most recently, which is Surge by J. Bernard, and this one has been sticking with me and stayed in my mind, and I been thinking about it more. It's a book of poetry, but it also incorporates all this archival research into this fire that killed a number of teenagers and was suspected to be a racist attack, and provoked a demonstration and a protest march in the early 80s in London. He incorporates it into these poems. Some of the poems are inspired by protest songs, and so they're whole mixtures of different elements to try to invoke the spirits of these teenagers that were lost in this fire, and the spirits of the voices of people in protest after their deaths. And so yeah, it's incorporating the spirits of the living and the dead, and yeah, it's just a fascinating way of thinking about history and language and community and identity, and if identity labels even really matter so much. Like, does that matter in how we construct ourselves as a community? Are these labels useful? It's really thought-provoking and very moving, and yeah, it has so many fascinating ideas. So yeah, absolutely one of my top books of the year so far. The next question is, what's the most disappointing book you've read this year? And that would have to be Stubborn Archivist by Yara Rodrigues of Fowler, which in all fairness, I didn't finish reading. I think I read 60 or 70 pages of it, and I just wasn't getting along with it. She's this very contemporary voice in Britain, who comes from a Brazilian background, and so I really like the idea of it of capturing this voice of youth in Britain of mixed national heritage, but uh, but it just didn't really land for me. It came across more as just this sort of voyeuristically watching this young woman talk about her life in a way that wasn't all that interesting, and so I just I didn't really connect with it. It maybe it developed as it went along, but it just didn't capture my imagination. And yeah, just the way she wrote this novel just didn't really do it for me. So yeah, I just found that a bit disappointing because it's been really lauded and other people have really liked it, but wasn't for me. Question 4 is, what genre have you read most this year? And I loved Matthew's answer for this. Depressing contemporary literary adult fiction. And I mean, that's basically my category too, mostly what I read as well. And I always get stuck when people ask me this question of oh, you do a book vlog. What sort of books do you read? And it always feels a bit wanky to me saying oh, I read literary fiction or new literary fiction. And but like, what does that even mean? And just, I don't like this label of literary fiction, but I don't really know how else to describe what I read. But something I have been reading particularly this year is memoirs or memoirist fiction, or books that combine some memoir type elements. So that's a sort of genre that I've been reading lately. Question number 5 is, name a new favorite author that you've discovered this year, and without a doubt that has to be Annie Ernaux. I read her novel The Years, or her memoir The Years, whatever you want to call it, that was shortlisted for the Man Booker International Prize, and yeah, I've been talking about this book so much, and it's really, I think, changed the way that I've thought about books and how I read books and how I approach history and all those good things. And so yeah, this is the only book I've read by her, in all fairness, so maybe her other books don't live up to it, but she's a writer of advanced age. She's written quite a few books, and her books keep being translated. Another book of hers was already translated this year and also published by Fitzcarraldo Editions. And I was at an event the other night where I saw the writer Maggie Nelson speak, and I was in line to get my book signed, and it just happened that next to me was somebody that worked for Fitzcarraldo Editions, and I got to chatting with her, and she said they're bringing out another book by Annie Ernaux in a couple months' time. So hooray! Wonderful thing about discovering a new writer is that who's written a lot is that they've there's a lot more books there already ready made for you to discover. Rather, if you read a new book by a debut author, then you have to wait for them to produce new books, and that can always be a frustrating thing, as Matthew was talking about in his videos. So yeah, I'm very excited to read more by Annie Ernaux, this wonderful French writer. So question 6, what's the most surprising good book you've read so far this year? And I mean, this book didn't really take me by surprise so much. I was expecting it to be a good book, but I wasn't expecting to connect with it as much as I did. And that's My Past is a Foreign Country by Zeba Talkani. And this is a book, I have to confess, like, in all honesty, one of the main reasons I read this book was because I happened to meet Zeba Talkani at a event. I went to the launch party for Elizabeth McNeil's novel The Doll Factory, and she was there, and we just happened to get talking to each other, and she's just a lovely person, and I'd already received an advance copy of her memoir to possibly read and review, and I just got to talking to her, and she seemed like such a lovely person. I thought, like, oh, I want to read your book, and it's happened before where I've met some authors where they said, like, oh, I have a new book out, and and they seemed like a lovely person, but I just haven't got around to reading their book, and so there was no like pressure or feeling like oh, this is a new friend, I want to read their new book, but it was just like, hey, I want to try reading this, and I did read it, and I loved it, and I really emotionally connected with it in a way I didn't expect, and I didn't expect her writing to be so powerful and inspirational. I found it really inspirational for thinking of somebody who grows up in a background where they don't quite fit in and are aware of that but don't really completely understand it. And she talks about the process of growing and learning and being inspired by all these other writers. She references all these other writers she reads and books she reads from a wide variety of backgrounds, and how that has all inspired her to be a feminist and to be an intellectual and to want to read more and grow herself. And yeah, I just found her journey so inspirational, from growing up in Saudi Arabia to then studying in India and Germany and the United Kingdom, and just having a variety of different experiences, and experiencing all these different cultures, and how to situate herself within all these different places. I just found so inspirational, and I know other people find this memoir so inspirational too. So I just ended up loving it, and yeah, it was wonderful. So what are your favorite and most anticipated 2019 releases? So there's been a number of books that people have talked about that they're looking forward to, and I'm looking forward to a lot of those books too. But then there's a few books. There's this one book, I'm just going to lean over and pull it out. It's called Baby by Annalise Jokens. She's a New Zealand writer, and this is a literary thriller being published by Scribe Publications. And I think it was first published in New Zealand a couple years ago, and it was brought out by a university press. I don't know if it's been out in America, but it's a literary thriller, and yeah, it just sounds so fascinating. I can't remember the summary right now, but it has a quote on it by Eleanor Catton, you know, the great writer of The Luminaries, who won the Booker Prize, and she calls it a sultry, sinister, hilarious, and demented. Baby blazes with intelligence and murderous black humor, and yeah, I just love it's the sound of the psychological thriller, and I just really want to get into it, and love this sort of color of cover of chewing into a jelly sandwich. So what's your next big priority read? Probably one of the books that I haven't got to so far this year that I've really been wanting to get to, like Ocean Vuong's novel On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. I read his poetry collection earlier this year in anticipation of it, but I still haven't read it yet, even though it's been published now, and I've been wanting to get to it, and everybody's been talking about it, and yeah, so I need to get to reading that. That's going to be one of my next big reads that I'm really anticipating. Question number 9, what's been your bookish highlight of the year so far? And that would have to be going to Latvia. I did a whole vlog about going to Latvia and discovering Latvian literature, and I went there, you know, to learn about Latvian literature and the history of Latvia, but also to connect with my family history there, since I have Latvian ancestors, and I talked about this in the vlog, and while I was there I got to meet a distant cousin that I've never met before, and that was just a wonderful experience. I loved it, and it was one of my favorite videos that I've made so far in all my years of doing booktube, and because it was really special and personally meaningful to me, and so it felt this wonderful fusion of literature and personal history, and it just meant so much to me the few days I spent there in Riga. So yeah, that's a wonderful memory. Who do you tag? I tag everyone. Don't let this tag die, like Matthew said, even though we've already gone past half the year, so it's not mid-year anymore, but I'm getting a bit past it. But yeah, if you want to do this tag, if it sounds good to you, jump in and do it as well, like I said, or you can leave your answers in the comments below. I'd love to know your answers to these questions too. So that's all of all the questions. Now I'll get on and make my homemade labneh, and labneh is really easy to make. It's making proper labneh cheese, that's probably more difficult, but this is like a quick and easy method of making labneh, and it goes really well with roasted sweet potatoes. So to make labneh, what I do is I just put some Greek yogurt, mix it up with some zest of lemon and some black pepper and salt, and I yeah, put that in cheesecloth and I tie it up tight and hang it over a bowl, because you want to let it drip for a few hours at least to try to get out some of the whey, which will come out in the liquid of this Greek yogurt, and that'll gradually drip out, and you'll be left with a bit of this firmer cheese type substance, and that goes great together with some. If you just want to chop up some sweet potatoes, don't even bother peeling them, just chop them up into bite-sized chunks, and roast them in an oven with some rosemary. Chopped up rosemary is really good with it, and some black pepper and salt, of course. And then you just roast that until the sweet potatoes are cooked. And if you want to be really fancy, you can make some homemade dukkah to put on it, which is this Middle Eastern spice and nut mixture, which is really aromatic and lovely. It's this mixture of pistachios and hazelnuts and sesame seeds and coriander seeds, cumin seeds, caraway seeds, and turmeric. And you blend it all up together in a mixture together. And then once the sweet potatoes are roasted, you just dust it over the sweet potatoes, and it'll just like infuse with the sweet potatoes. And you put the labneh with the lemon zest on the side, and then you eat it together, and it's just a lovely mixture. And if you want to be super, super fancy, you can sprinkle over some watercress on top of it when you're serving it to people, and then it looks like really fancy and nice, and yeah, it just makes a lovely dish. And so I'm making this to serve to some friends of ours that are coming over tomorrow night to watch some bad movies. Every once in a while we have a bad movie club, and we watch some really awfully, hilariously awful movies together, and yeah, it's good. So that'll be a good end to a week which has been a bit bleak and grey because I've not been feeling well. So yeah, that is the tag. Hope you're doing well. Let me know any of your thoughts or questions in the comments below, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye, everyone.